to the Heroic Nation podcast, brought to you by Heroic Industries, the most heroic podcast and company of all time. Very epic. Also brought to you today by the Heroic 14. Let me get this out of the way now so I don't forget. The Heroic 14 is a 14-day protocol that is totally free, designed to hit all of the pillars of the heroic man. Those include strength, mental resilience, violence, and leadership, right? It's a 14-day protocol. It goes through all of those things. It has workouts, it has nutrition, it has mindset, all for free. And it's inside of our men's group. So if you are a man and you are interested in this 14-day protocol, then just go ahead and click the link somewhere around here, and that'll put you into the Telegram group, and you can access it that way. Now, if you are a woman, you can go ahead and click the standalone link, which is also somewhere around here, and you can get that as well. I do not have a Telegram group built for women yet. Now, you can still get the link. You can still hit the 14 days. It'll still help a ton. But I just don't have a Telegram group for women right now. And if you are not a man or a woman, then you're probably in the wrong spot. So good luck to you. Okay, so now that's out of the way. I have a great episode that I actually filmed back in January, and Rob Wilson jumped on, and he is one of the best coaches in the tactical space for sure, and for other stuff too, other athletics, stuff like that. He's a great coach. Primarily, he's come out to my gym when I had it and taught in a breathwork clinic that was absolutely fantastic. Full day's worth of breath work, tactical breath work, and human performance. Like, those are his big specialties. He works with naval special warfare. He works with cops. His parents were cops. He understands the ins and outs of law enforcement, first responders. Like, the dude is a legit wealth of knowledge when it comes to this stuff. I talked to him for a couple hours. So I always do this with him, man. It's some people you just really jive with, and I really dig what he says, and I really get along with him. So we ended up talking for a long time. And take the time. It might take you a week to get through this, but get through it. It is really good information, whether you're a cop and you're dealing with nervous system regulation, or you are a parent dealing with kids that you don't know what to do with, or both. Right? It's all about breath work, nervous system regulation, other stuff. We talk about sleep, right? There is always people that are like, hey, listen, like, you got to go hard, grind, and it's get up at 4 a.m., go work out. Maybe, but like, where does sleep and recovery come into this? Like we talked about, sleep is not a luxury. It's a tactical necessity. Health is not a pass fail. Health is a grade. You can get a C, but you can and still pass. You don't have to get an A or an F. It's not like a zero-sum game here with this stuff. So we talked about that too. We talked about what it means to pay attention to your health and tactical performance, and overall just really good stuff. So take the time, check it out. Rob Wilson, you can find him on Instagram at Check Engine Light. And let me know what you think. All right. So with that said, hit the Heroic 14 and join the Telegram group if you're a dude, and then enjoy Rob Wilson.
Working on book, doing a bunch of work with remodeling my house.
Just normal stuff.
Normal stuff. What about you, man?
Oh, yeah, the same. Not really, but just doing a lot of coaching for online stuff, and then honestly, I'm doing a lot of work for my kids' high school, coaching their football team. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I do running backs. I help out running backs, and I do all the strength conditioning stuff in the off season. So it's
fun.
Yeah. Never gonna get rich. Never gonna get rich doing that. But
that's different kind of. It's a different kind of wealth.
It totally is. Yeah.
That's great. You're still in the police department, yeah?
Yep. Still doing that.
Nice. How long you got before 20?
Oh man, I just crossed 17 years this past October. So I got another 2 and change till I get 20. So.
That's good though, man.
Yeah.
17 years. At least the environment's taking a turn, right?
Yeah, and being in the Midwest, we're somewhat insulated. Like, we had that 2020 was a nightmare, like, for everybody. But it normalized much quicker here than it did on the coast, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So being in, like, where you're at in Virginia Beach with all the military stuff, did it get crazy there, or was it pretty okay?
There was some things that happened with the military that were like internal to government employees, probably similar to stuff you guys had, where there was some debate over what kind of work should be done and who should get vaccines and mandatory states of vaccines. And there was some back and forth about that, but it was like very rapid return to normalcy very quickly. We didn't have a ton of shutdown. We had some time when there was like modified scheduling and stuff, but my daughter was in her senior year of high school during that time, and it turned around pretty quickly because we're in the South. So once people realize, okay, there are some at risk populations, and like we should take care of those people, just like when any illness starts to run rampant. But young, healthy people should, for the most part, go about their business. And like always, if they're really sick, they shouldn't go be around other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So common sense. So common sense again, once again, reigns supreme.
It turns out. But yeah, there was a little bit of hubbub because there's a lot of federal government, there's a lot of federal employees aside from the military. So there's tons of federal contracting here.
Yeah.
So there was some instability, but people found ways around it. Oh, we'll test people every day before they come into work, and they would have like isolation areas.
Yeah.
So come in, test, you test positive, go home. You test negative today, business as usual.
Yeah.
People found a way around it. It's all good.
Yeah. I was listening to, what was I listening to? I was listening to Jordan Peterson just released a podcast with Rob Schneider of all people. I don't know, like
no kidding.
Really good stuff. But they were talking about COVID and 2020 and going through some of that. And I'm like, man, it started giving me anxiety, and it started like making me like get super sympathetic to the point where I was like, I need to go take a walk and shut this thing off. And it didn't even hit me until that moment when I was like, I think that time frame really fucked me up for a lot of reasons. It fucked me up. And it was the riots. It was everything we went through with that as law enforcement, the whole George Floyd nonsense, which was all this stuff has since been proven to be like all but completely false. A lot of these narratives that have been spun up, and I'm still waiting for apologies from people. And my inbox is open for that. But
don't hold your breath.
I know. But yeah, it's like between that and then all the policies with the kids in school, and dude, I got into it with my kids' school, they're normal, rational people, but they bought into all of these like procedural things that this is not right, this is not legal what you're doing. These are like knee-jerk policies and protocols that people have enacted, and they're acting as if they're laws, and they are not laws. They are at best local ordinances, and those are not like gonna send you to prison type deal. Like you can't do that. At worst, you can get like a little baby fine. That's a city ordinance. That's a local ordinance. But people are treating these things like they're laws. And I got into it with my kids' school over vaccination statuses and when people can go where. Because some kids, if they had a shot, could go back to school next day and go back into sports. But my kids, because they did not, had to spend 2 weeks being punished and being sent away and not being able to play sports and stuff like that. And I brought up the fact that the schools are creating a separate but equal status based on health, and then cited Brown versus Board of Education, which if you're at all in education, right, Brown versus Board of Education is separate but equal cannot be a thing, and that is gospel, right, to a public school. Especially you start bringing that up and say you're actually violating Brown, and then they're like, oh my God, what have I done? And I actually cornered our principal into saying, yes, I know this is separate. These are separate standards, but I was like, you just said it. You just said it. So stuff like that. And then everything else that I just listed. And then when I was listening to that podcast, I was like, oh man, like I think I might have to process this stuff a little bit more still 5 years later.
It's a lot. And my daughter, she graduated high school in 2020, and then she went to her first year at Virginia Tech. And there was like kids who were paying college tuition for classes they couldn't go to. So they're basically like getting a Zoom education for the price of in-person professor access. And you guys not see how these things don't equate?
Yeah.
Like you should be charging for online classes because these classes are online.
Right.
Why is it still regular tuition? Like it's a $20,000 difference. This doesn't make sense. But, when people are uncertain and they're afraid, they will do almost anything that generates some kind of stability, even if they're not sure if it's right.
Yeah.
Because instability is the scariest thing. So, like 10,000 foot view, I understood it, but it didn't make things any more comfortable. I was very fortunate because I was working from home anyway. So I was traveling and teaching still. At that time, I was still teaching art of breath stuff.
Yeah.
And we had a large online platform. So we just shifted all of our focus and I was working from home. So for me personally, it didn't change that much other than I had to take a COVID test before I went to the gym every day. But that wasn't truth be told, that's because I wanted to be in the environment. I have every piece of workout gear at home. So I could have just worked out in my backyard, but I think it'd be interesting in 20 years to see like what the history books say.
It all depends who's writing them.
Doesn't it?
If it's the same groups that are writing them now, I know it will omit a lot. There will be a lot of stuff that will not be covered with the greatest pandemic that the world has ever seen. Yeah, I had some questions about that. And I totally didn't plan on talking about this at all today, but so I ran into our health commissioner in our county was a volunteer medic on our SWAT team, and he's very left leaning, and he was given all the talking points, and that was before everybody kind of really questioned, like, is this actually, what is this? The people weren't questioning anything; they were just taking the news media for face value, right, for gospel. And I'm hearing all these talking points, but they don't match what I'm seeing on the road. So as a cop, like what I saw on the road was nothing different other than there were no cars. There were not, like I expected. I was like, all right, if this is like the real deal, like we're going to be carting bodies out. It's going to look like Monty Python, bring out your dead type stuff, right? And I expected that the most vulnerable populations would be the homeless, right? And we'd be like pulling those bodies out from rivers and bridges and stuff like that. And didn't see any of it. None of that happened. And I talked to some of my other buddies in bigger cities, and they're like, "No, we don't have that at all. Actually, they're doing pretty darn good." And I asked our health commissioner, I said, "This is so bad. Then why aren't we seeing a huge spike in homeless population death? Because they're the most vulnerable to all diseases. They don't have access to housing or medical or masks or vaccines or vitamins or food that doesn't suck. Like none of it." And he just looked at me and his jaw dropped open and just said, "We don't have all the numbers in yet." And I was like, "Dude, you are so full of crap. You're so full of crap. I'm calling it right now. You're full of crap." Like this whole thing is like, I said, the most vulnerable would be them. They should be the canaries in the mine. They should all be dead if this thing is what you say. And then the next most vulnerable is going to be all the cops and firefighters that got to be pulling people out, and the medics. Like they're going to be dead next too. And we didn't see that many dead. And most of them had co-occurring comorbidities and that kind of stuff. And if that was truly the cause, it's because they were loose and fast with the numbers too. But yeah, it's just wild to go back and think about that stuff.
Yeah, I still think that there's second and third order effects, not even just like population wide, but for individuals that are still occurring. Like you said, like things that happened in 2020, there's 2020 to 2022 are still affecting people's even just like basic levels of vigilance, right? Trust in information. There's a lot of cultural issues and individual issues that are still occurring. Like I know right now the bird flu was going around, and it's like people are like triggered on, oh fuck, are they going to make a thing out of this? Even if you don't think of the bird flu as a thing, you're wondering like, is a big deal going to be made out of this in a way that's going to affect my day-to-day life negatively? Because most people, regardless of whatever side of the sort of political fence you tend to lean on, most people just want to get on with the day-to-day business of going to work and being with their family and just want things to be stable enough to have an environment where they can like raise their children and get on with business.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think it created a lot of like volatility that is still there. I don't think everything has stabilized, and I think it's harder for it to stabilize probably because we have so much access to information that is really far away from us.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I think that from a standpoint of, yeah, we have information for a lot of things that really don't affect us. And then we get worked up about stuff that has no bearing on even stuff to as big as the presidency. Like a lot of times, like it really, how much does a president affect me here in Indiana day to day? Probably not much. Policies in some cases, especially in 2020 and on, based on the fact that I'm a cop, like a little bit more maybe than usual. But like I survived a lot of presidency terms where if I just really stopped paying attention, I forgot about them. So
your governor and your mayor and your city council and your school board are probably way more important to pay attention to.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, like what is actually in your sphere of influence and what is going to impact your day to day life? Should I worry about that? And then where am I getting my news from? And that's a big thing that I saw when I started hearing things that didn't match what I was seeing. I'm like, all right, the news I think is compromised. Social media is not a good source for information. If you're getting your news from what's trending online, that's probably stupid too. And maybe I ought to just take what I see with my own eyeballs as the news. I got to go and do my own investigating and be responsible for myself. That's a big takeaway that I got from it.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that you actually have access. That's what you have access to. And there's actually a big parallel here with managing health and performance, right? Which is we have all these like 50,000 foot views of research. Research says this, research says that. Everybody wants to hear about research. If you put research says in front of a statement, it's like in the health and fitness world, that's if you're in the Bible Belt and you say the Bible says, it's like then disregard all other information because research says. And a lot of times we don't corroborate that with what is happening right in front of me. What is happening to me today? How is that information relevant and actionable for me? I'm not saying also to ignore research, but the purpose of that 50,000 foot view is to have a better idea of a better framework to understand what it is you're seeing in front of you, not to disregard what your own experience is in favor of something that happened in a laboratory somewhere. Right. Like probably one of the main examples I see of this is I talk to a room full of operators 4 times a week about things like HRV and sleep. When you ask those guys, who in this room has had a sleep study, right? You get a polysomnograph and you're in a sleep lab and they're measuring EKG and EEG and all this shit. Usually 80% of the hands in the room go up. I'm like, who got their best night of sleep ever during a sleep study? And the answer is, fuck no. It's like nobody sleeps well in a sleep study because you're in a weird room strapped with weird shit on a weird bed with weird noises. You basically have every single recipe item for a bad night of sleep while you're getting a sleep study.
Do they give you whiskey before? They give you
Yes,
whiskey shots before?
they probably should, but so now we are generating normative data, which is still important to have, but to compare that to, okay, what happens when I'm at my house in my bed, my spouse is sleeping there, and I have young kids or a dog that barks or whatever. Those aren't necessarily comparable contexts. So we have to be able to take the front page news and then compare it to, okay, like what matches what happens at my house and what doesn't match. And then go, okay, I did read this thing about trying to reduce the amount of blue light, but let me try that and see what effect it has for me. Like in my house, in my circumstances, because it may or may not have as palpable of an effect as we think.
Yeah, so it's taking the data, taking the general overarching like conclusions of things, and then applying it to yourself as an N of one. Because if it works, then awesome. Then you fall into the conclusion stuff, whatever that is. And if it doesn't, then you just say either I didn't apply this correctly or it doesn't work, and I should figure it out from there.
Yeah, and then you have the next step in your course of action.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have an informed bit of experience, and I can do the next thing, which is either continue to repeat what works or find something else.
Yeah.
And my primary point with the populations that I work with now, which is almost exclusively tactical, is the most important part of all of that is learning how to pay attention better. So like underneath all of that, whatever experiment you happen to be trying or sleep hack or whatever, the primary benefit is that you're staying attuned to the thing in the first place. Do I even know what's going on in here? So I'm sure you know this. You've been a fit dude for a long time. You're always tinkering with something. There's always like some little tweak in the training program, or can I get a little bit more, squeeze a little more recovery out of this? Or if I dial my food in a little bit more like that. And so it's just part of your consciousness all the time. So there's information that you're getting about what's going on with your health constantly because you're tinkering with something. So, I'm trying a little of this. I tried a little bit of that. I heard about this thing. I read that study. I heard this podcast. I'm going to do a little bit of this. And so you do all these little experiments. And if you do that over the course of 25 or 30 years, the collection is you've paid attention a whole bunch to how things affect your mind and body and the kind of performance outcomes you get. And then you get better and better at tuning yourself based on the outcomes that you want. And you notice, oh man, this thing's coming up that's going to be more disruptive of my sleep pattern or my recovery. The holidays are coming up, or I got a family trip that we're going to go on. And so I know my sleep's going to get jacked up. But I remember I tried this thing that helps me sleep. I'm going to bring that supplement with me. So you just end up being ahead of the curve because you're used to paying attention. Whereas a lot of folks are unaccustomed to what the important information is to do something with in the first place. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, the best self-defense is don't be there. So if you're prepping to the fact that you're not going to be in that spot or you're going to hedge your bets in that direction to just be prepared, yeah, that makes total sense, especially from an overarching, like you said, like a big picture view. Now, you mentioned a couple of things I wouldn't mind digging into a little bit, especially in reference to tactical populations, sleep and HRV. HRV, I don't know a ton about, but I know sleep, anytime you talk to anybody, whether it's especially cops, firefighters, and like shift workers. It's you talk about sleep and then they just glaze over and they're like, not even going to try. It's we'll sleep. Yeah, our sleep is all messed up. I don't know how many times I've heard people talking about health in the tactical space for cops. And they're like, yeah, we should get sleep, but we don't. We're not gonna. So moving on. And we don't even talk about it. And then somebody else comes in and they start talking about mental health. And it's like the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for mental health is tell somebody to go get a good night's sleep for a day or two and then see how their mental health is. But we don't make that connection. So how do you discuss sleep in reference to tactical populations?
So let me zoom out a little bit and then I'll zoom back into sleep.
Yeah.
I think one of the major shortcomings when health or performance experts talk to tactical populations, one of the biggest shortcomings that they have is they don't entirely acknowledge the reality of the environment that those individuals are working in. And that what I mean by that is something like if you're a police officer, probably for the first, 5 to 7 years of your career, you're going to get the garbage shift. Is that fair if you're a patrol officer?
I'd say more than likely, either by choice or by force. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna work midnights.
Yeah.
And working midnights for that time is not at a baseline an ideal sleep environment, and everybody knows it. However, embedded within that less than ideal environment is not just what happens most of the time, which is, hey, just do better. It's given the uncontrollables, what opportunities do you have to rest that you could take advantage of that are realistic? That's a much better framework to start from than, hey, the ideal is 7.5, 9 hours of sleep. You should be getting 30% of that time should be in N3 deep sleep and REM. And if you're not getting that, shit's all fucked up and you need to fix it. So that sounds great, but not only am I a cop, but I'm also a spouse and I have kids and we got a dog that just broke its leg. And I also have a different job on the weekend because this shit doesn't pay that much. Right. And so there's that. And then also there's a leak in my roof. And so I got to do something about that. There's other life stuff happening. So the question is, do you have the skill to pump the brakes? That's how I explain it now. So I talk about things like sympathetic and parasympathetic still, but I talk about it in terms of gas pedal, brake pedal. Sleep is the brake pedal is all the way on. Sometimes it's not possible to stop all the way. But what opportunities do you have to rest? And are you taking full advantage of them? So I try not to talk from terms of, well, we will explain what normative values look like in sleep, right? So if the world were perfect and you could get the most ideal sleep, this is what sleep is and how it would occur. It's an unconscious state at night where your brain and body go through a predictable sequence of behavior that restores physiology and neurology so that you can recover from stress and move forward, right? That's in essence, sleep is this predictable behavior in brain and body. And then there are cycles that we know about, right? There's non-REM and there's REM, and there's given periods of time for both of those. And there's specific things that happen in your brain and body during those, right? So we know things like, for example, deep sleep. That's when we're releasing like human growth hormone, testosterone levels go up. That's when we're pruning unneeded synapses in the brain, and we're healing tissues in the body, right? That's for all intents and purposes a 5-second summary of deep sleep. And then we have REM sleep, which is the dream state. And then we do things like consolidate memories. This is where emotional regulation occurs. REM's really important for mood regulation. And we go back and forth between those two cycles in about 90 to 120 minute intervals, somewhere between 4 and 6 times per night. That's if we're under normal natural conditions where we get the exact amount of exposure to light and our default physiological circadian rhythm functions exactly as it's preset by nature. However, under all human conditions, there's a lot of variability. Even if you're not a modern cop, 10,000 years ago, shit would happen at night sometimes. A neighboring tribe would come in, animals, weather, shit happens. We're not so fragile that we can't get some bad nights of sleep, even for a while, and continue to function. Everybody knows that you can. That's the other thing is people in tactical professions ignore things like sleep because you can get away with it for a long time. I'm fine. I feel fine. What are you talking about? I haven't slept well in years. I can still do my job. I can still handle stuff. On top of that, though, is usually like a cycle of mood dysregulation, building social problems, using caffeine to wake, and nicotine and alcohol to downregulate. And so then we have substances that, however you want to look at it, enhance those capacities or cover up shortcomings. And we don't recognize the degradation in performance, whether performance means on the job, if you're a first responder, or if the degradation in performance leaks out somewhere else, like in home life, right? So then other coping mechanisms or other dysregulation starts to occur. Bringing this back to sleep, the question isn't, if I can't get it perfect, I shouldn't do it at all. That's like saying, if I can't save $50,000 a year, I shouldn't save at all. Saving $200 a month is better than $0 a month. And that's exactly what making whatever opportunity you have for sleep as best as possible. And I like to think about it in two categories: take away what hurts first, then add what helps. Now, some of the things that hurt, you don't have any control over. If you do shift work, then let's not even talk about it, because you've chosen a career path where that's already happening. I don't want to talk to you about shift work hurts your sleep. Everybody knows it's already the thing you do. We shouldn't even discuss it, because unless you're going to stop being a cop or a firefighter or work in the ER, then it doesn't matter, because it's an uncontrollable. That's the conditions of the environment. Just sure, wouldn't it be nice if community policing wasn't stressful? But that's not the reality. Everywhere you go, it's an emergency. Yeah. So that's a reality. Sleep schedules are disrupted. What are the things that you do have control over that make it harder for you to get the rest that you need, even more than other people who don't work at night? Do you scroll on your phone? Do you watch TV? Drink booze? Have caffeine late? What are the other things that are interfering with your ability to transition into a state of rest? Here's the thing, and this is what I say when I work with these populations: think about all the factors that affect your sleep like a report card, right? Light exposure, temperature, sound, your sleep routine, the foods you eat. All of those things are like grades on a report card. You don't have to get straight A's all the time. And here's the thing: if you have all things being equal, a B plus in your sleep for 10 years, I don't have anything to say to you, because you have a B plus in sleep. But if you got a D minus in sleep, and you don't show up to class on time, you don't go to bed on time, you don't make effort, then who's culpable now? We're not talking about the conditions of the job. We've already established that they're not ideal, but it's the path that's been chosen. Okay. But what are the things that you do have control over? And there are some simple ones. Light is number one. The ability to manipulate light in the environment is easily the most powerful thing. I know Huberman talks about sunrise and sunset and all that stuff. I think that can be difficult for people who do shift work, especially to hit the reset button when you have one day off, and then to try to be on a day schedule for one day and then go back to night schedule. Sometimes that's more stressful than just living on nights until you don't do that anymore. Right. I mean, I know this because my parents are both retired police officers. So I know what our household was like. And my mom, when she was on nights, when I was a little kid, she was just on nights.
Yeah.
She was worse to interact with, trying to be on nights and on day. She just worked her ass off to get off that schedule.
Yeah, because
Right.
if you're going to do that, and I watch my buddies do that, and when I was on nights, I like that. I would never try to do that because you're going to go for at least part of the week with 24 to 36 hours without any sleep whatsoever. And that is a difficult thing to do. You're gonna completely flip everything on its head and go no sleep, so you can go backwards for a day and then go right back to where you were. There's an easier way from a strategy standpoint to just shift your sleep window up or down a little bit so you can have a slightly more normal life. Like instead of going to bed at 7 a.m., you go to bed at 4 a.m. You don't have to flip everything on its head, and then you can get up 2-3 hours earlier and then have somewhat of a medium like day life for your off days, whatever those are. And then or go to a kids conference or whatever. You just have to shift that window, and that's a whole lot better from a consistency standpoint than just up everything goes upside down. And sometimes you
Yeah,
can't avoid it. Sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes
of
the environment,
course.
but
Of
if
course it
that,
does.
yeah,
And the environment dictates some for everybody. That's just a fact of life. Tactical professions have additional demands because of the nature of the work. But even if you're not in a tactical profession, maybe you have a new baby. Maybe your neighbor's car alarm is malfunctioning. Maybe you're up late writing papers because you're in college. Like shit happens. Life is occurring and it's not designed to be perfect for us. The more chips we can stack in our favor, though, the better things go long term. And people often don't understand the difference between surviving and thriving, and they're not the same thing. Surviving the job is what happens a lot in tactical professions. People just make it until they finally finish their 20 whatever years, and then a year later they're mowing their lawn and they have a coronary.
yes,
And
all the time.
all of that is the course that I teach now to Naval Special Warfare is called the check engine light, because basically the check engine light is flashing for years and years, but it's the truck still starts. But meanwhile, like the muffler's hanging off and there's smoke coming out and it smells like coolant, but it's like, as long as this fucker starts every day, good to go. That's not the same thing as performance longevity. And performance longevity can mean doing well in the job. So while you're still policing the community, are you able to be present with the skill set you've developed to continue to serve your community? But it also means, is there something left in the tank for like my family and for myself? So do I even have enough energy and bandwidth left to have a hobby, to have an outlet, and to do something that isn't just some cover up coping mechanism so that I can not think about the job for a short time before I go pull money out of the health bank account again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that sort of 50,000 foot view applies directly to sleep. And I think when it comes to sleep, particularly to bring it back to your original question, that concept, that idea, sleep hygiene, is made way more complicated than it needs to be. Like consistency in scheduling is probably, like you were just talking about, finding a way to generate some consistency in the schedule is probably one of the biggest levers that you can pull on, so that when you can anticipate getting rest, that's a big deal. So even if you have a stint where it's 36 hours where you're not going to sleep, all right, I just got to make it to 4 a.m. on that day, and then I'm gonna get to sleep, instead of I'm tired all the time, so fuck it, I'm just gonna drink coffee in Celsius to keep myself awake, and then when I can't fall asleep, I'm gonna pop an Ambien or drink beers until I become unconscious, or so I can become unconscious and then actually disrupt the capacity for rejuvenation during that time. That's what happens a lot in tactical professions is people equate a period of time where they're unconscious as being the same thing as being asleep. And that is not. Sleep is where specific healing processes occur so that you can continue to adapt to the stress that you're under. And tactical professions have a really high, what we call allostatic load. There's always a buzz of stress because it's an environment where emergencies can occur at any time. And they can occur in unique ways that you don't expect, things that become normal in the job, but that for anybody else might be like the most traumatic day of their life, right? Like seeing a dead person for most people, walking up and going, oh my God, this person just killed this person and I'm right here. That might be like, for most people, like a day you'd remember for your whole fucking life. Man, if you're a cop, that might be Tuesday.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. And it's okay to not dwell on it, but to think that it's free is a misunderstanding. And to have the environment withdraw from you without taking advantage of opportunities to make deposits back into your account is a poor strategy that will not lead to the kind of health that everybody says they want. And what will happen is eventually you go, oh my God, I don't know what I haven't had problems for years. And all of a sudden the doctor says, I got this heart thing, or I got bad blood pressure, and it's some of that is, yes, the job, but also on top of the job, did you eat a bunch of super salty, refined, processed food, never get sleep? So in an environment where it's more necessary to rest well, less focus on rest. And the reason I bring it back to like individual responsibility is because no policy, however well written, can monitor the continuous behavior of every individual that governs that policy, that is governed by that policy. It doesn't matter what it is. If a policy was everybody has to get X amount of hours of sleep and we're going to monitor it, if the individuals don't take responsibility for that, it won't change the culture and people will just find a way around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Now, I will say that I think it's twofold there because, yeah, it's the person's responsibility. So if we say, hey, you have to have 8 hours of sleep per night as a cop, and we're going to monitor this, right? If you don't go home and do all the things you need to in order to make that effective, then you're wasting your time. You're finding a workaround. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but also, let's say there was a policy that's like, hey, you got to go get 8 hours of sleep. What about all the other factors that are outside of the control of that person? What I'm talking about is providing a level of education that makes it possible for the individual to monitor appropriately the reality of their own health and then to manage that in ways that make sense to them so that it's possible to take personal responsibility, not like personal fault. Oh, you didn't get 8 hours, so we're docking your pay. Don't even bother coming into work. But you can't, no amount of legislation would be the same as convincing people that it's important and then giving them a reasonable path to execution. I know you saw the balloons. I think that's just anytime I hold up two fingers, Zoom gives me balloons. I cannot figure out why.
I was freaking out. I was like, is that on my end? How did
No,
that
that's
happen?
me. It happens all the time when I'm on Zoom and I cannot figure it out for the life of me, dude. But it's hilarious because I literally will be on a call and there's like a room full of a dozen team guys. And I'm like, in one and then two, and I'm making a serious point, and then balloons float up in the screen. No, for me, one of the disconnects is that when these ideas are presented to tactical communities, often there's not language that's used that's culturally competent and doesn't truly address the reality of the average individual's personality and opportunity in that community. Do you make it simple enough? So again, like when I present it and I talk about something like sleep, for example, I talk about light, temperature, routine, nutrition, and noise. Because those are five, I call them stable levers. What are the five stable levers that anybody can pull on, will collectively have a positive impact on sleep? So, do you know how to measure your sleep? And then, if once you know how to measure it, not just measure the time that you were unconscious, but what sleep is, how to measure it. And then, okay, I only have an opportunity for 5 hours of rest. What things can I do that will help? And what things can I take away that might hurt? Even if it doesn't completely alleviate my sleep stress, maybe I can mitigate how tired I'll be. Right. So it's not about looking for a 4.0 sleep GPA all the time, because that might not be possible in a tactical population. But can you get like a 2.8 to like a 3.3 GPA for 15 years? Man, that matters. Like compounding interest in health is a big deal, right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, you don't have to have a heroic day in the gym every day to stay fit. If you put in a little bit of work every day for 20 years, it's pretty insane how fit you can stay. Like it really doesn't, it takes, this is like such a boring trope sometimes, but it's like consistency is key, but it is. That's the thing. That's why it keeps holding, because again, compounding interest, I think there's something like, this number is probably not exactly right, but it's something like if you saved $100 a month starting when you're 18 years old, you'd be a millionaire by the time you were like 42. And because of compounding interest. And the same thing happens with health investment. Do I go to bed on time every single night and get this perfect night of sleep like some kind of freaking sleep monk? No. And sometimes it's for stupid reasons, because I stay up watching TV with my wife.
Right.
But I could say, and that's not even a stupid reason, I'm spending that capital to spend time with my spouse, but I do enough right in the other domains that when I slip one place, I make up for it somewhere else. I eat clean enough. I go to bed on time enough. I manage my stress enough. I exercise enough. That all of that together supports a robust system. And part of the problem with segregating something like mental health from sleep, from exercise, is people think that one is more important than the other, or that they're in some way separate. Health is health. Health is health. You have to do a little bit in all the domains, not a whole bunch in one and nothing in the others. Now, you can focus on one for a given period of time so you can raise your game up, but the actual effect is my sleep's not perfect, but I try to go to bed on time. I know it's another augmented reality thing. I don't go to bed on time every single night, but Monday through Friday, I try to have consistency. On nights when I know I'm not going to get as much sleep, I take a little bit of magnesium and L-theanine to give me a little bit of a boost. Those days, I also make sure that I don't eat junk food, because I know I'm not going to get as much sleep. Now, I'm a fitness dude since I was a kid. Does that mean I never eat junk food? No. Not at all, actually. Like, I have a dark chocolate thing, right? I like salt. However, I would say 85% of the time, pretty good to go. right? And so those things add up. And it's all these little things. You don't have to have an A plus in every category every day. And I think that's a big misnomer. And that happens across the totality of health. And then it happens in the individual domains of health, where, like, when we talk about something like mental health, where some of the discussion around that makes people think if they're feeling a little depressed or something that they saw or experienced is bothering them, that something is wrong with them. So we pathologize normal reactions to extraordinary situations sometimes, instead of being like, man, that makes sense that bothered you. That was fucked up. Okay.
Yeah.
And also not like you should dwell on it for 2 years and cry every single day either. But what is the path to integration? And that physical health and mental health, they go hand in hand. And while you are dealing with something mentally, whatever that is, relationship stress, you saw something wild on the job, COVID regulations stressed you out,
Yeah.
policing policies got you pissed off for a while, that all of that still is having an effect on your stress physiology. But if all the other ducks are in a row, you can handle that better. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but what I've been trying to do is generate a systematic way to deliver that information to tactical populations and make it into something simple and mechanical. So here's an example. Like, when you get into your patrol car at the beginning of a shift, you do a bunch of systems checks, siren work, radio check, all. I'm sure I've never been a police officer, but I'm sure there's a standard operating procedure where there's equipment that needs to be checked for functionality. And if it doesn't operate the way it should, there's a decision tree for the next thing that you do to change that situation. Some of those things there's protocols. Some of those things are right now. If this doesn't work, then right now I have to do something. And there's some things that are like, I'll stick a pin in this and let someone know. Why wouldn't you have a system the same way for this?
Yeah.
It's not about anything other than I want my stuff to work when I want it to work.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
I just want my stuff to work.
Oh yeah, and that's I talk to, sometimes when I'm allowed to, I talk to our academy about like fitness and wellness and stuff like that. And it's, listen, are you gonna get into 100% chance that you're gonna get into a situation where you will need your body to execute 100% or someone will die? No, that's not 100% chance that happens in your career. Like, just most cops don't ever shoot anybody. Most cops don't have to take that perfect headshot on a hostage taker. That'll never happen. That's a very small percentage. But are you willing to hedge your bets and say, I'm going to hedge my bets that I'm not going to worry about it and I'm just going to ignore the check engine light? You know what I mean? Or are you like, no, I think that sounds pretty important. I think I'm going to hedge the other way, at least mostly the other way, like 70, 80% the other way. Like, we don't have to be a full go hardcore SEAL Team 6 as a road cop. Like, you don't have to do that. If you're training, like, people look at the way that I've trained over the years, especially when I was competing in CrossFit, and they're like, and I think it actually was detrimental to me promoting health and fitness to like a more general law enforcement client base, because they see what I did, and I'm training actually for a sport, not for longevity, not for law enforcement, not for anything like that they would need. So that training actually detracted from what they needed to do. And I didn't know enough to make the differentiation. No, I'm actually not training for law enforcement. I'm training for CrossFit. You know, I like to say that this is functional and stuff, but I'm playing a game over here. It'd be like if I did jujitsu and I'm like, you have to do it this way because this is what competitions say. So that's not street fighting. That's not what you do in the street with jujitsu. You do that on the mat with a gi because it's a game. But yeah, so like, where do you have to hedge your bets and what percentage do you need where? And that is an individual conversation that you need to have, every one of us.
Yeah, and even if you're never going to take that headshot or be involved in a life or death confrontation, the slow killer is the constant dripping of stress into the system. And when I say stress, disruptors of your baseline health that also interrupt your ability to recover. So when we talk about stress, stress is, I work a shift job. That is a stressor because your sleep wake cycle is disrupted for long periods of time. So that's a consistent stressor across time in law enforcement. Even if you work in a boring little tiny town where nothing crazy happens, you never even have to drive your vehicle that fast. It's not even just about being ready for a certain type of call that might come over the radio one day. That's part of it. But it's also, this thing is going to take a slow toll. Just because you have to do things that are disruptive to your body. You have to stay up late. You have to be more vigilant. You have to pay attention to what's going on. People don't understand, like, vigilance isn't free. You don't just get to pay attention to what's going on all the time, and then that doesn't cost anything. Being more vigilant and aware of what's going on in the environment costs energy. Now, is that bad? I don't think so. I want people who are doing policing to be more vigilant and aware, for sure. However, I also want those individuals who, I call it, like, who sit on the fence, right? The people who keep watch, to continue to do it well. And the way you do that is by knowing that it's a little more expensive, and then knowing, how do I put money back in the account? And that's by minimally not, like, eating food that causes further withdrawals from the account. Don't make it worse than it already is at baseline. Not just because, for me, if there was an emergency at my home, I'd want fit people to show up, right? That's me as a citizen. Like, I'd not want people to show up and go, shit, I'm going to be the one. Like, I want the professionals who have skills to show up and look like people who can handle business and be like, cool, I can just sit back and let people who have skills do their job. That's me. That's my viewpoint as like a regular citizen dude. But also, I think when you hit your 20 years, to be healthy enough to go enjoy your life with your kids and not be like, I'm not shot from this. I did my 20 serving my community and everything hurts and I'm burnt out, angry, and tired. So does it have to be that? And I don't think so. And the opposite of that is health. It's literally health. I don't mean like you're guaranteed happiness because you eat enough asparagus. I mean, all of the controllables of exercise and stress management and going to bed on time and eating pretty good, all of that together is an oppositional force to feeling like shit.
Yeah.
And it's a skill set, and it doesn't have to be a complicated one, and it doesn't need to be an extreme one. And in fact, extremes are unsustainable. People don't play football for 50 years.
Huh. Yeah, don't I know it? Right.
Because it's expensive to smash your body into other people's bodies. People don't play football for 50 years. That's why. Okay. So it's expensive. Being a police officer is expensive, but it's expensive over a longer timeline. And the question is, how do I cost mitigate? That's it. And you build simple skills. And most of those are way more sustainable anyway. The little stuff. I go to bed in this little window. I do these simple exercises on a regular basis. Whatever. I walk my dog before bed. I get my steps in. I try not to eat trash Monday through Friday. right? I eat real food. I don't even count calories or nothing. I'm not saying me personally. I'm just saying like it's literally that simple stuff done
Yeah.
for a long time
Yeah.
is what it is. Just like you don't have to take if you drive a normal car, you don't have to take it to a race shop to make it run well. You just need to change the oil on a regular basis and change the spark plugs when they need to be changed. And if your muffler's making a weird noise, go get it checked out. And if your tire pressure is low, go put some air in it. But if you just ride around on a flat tire for 2 years, you can't bitch about your suspension because that is the outcome of riding around on a flat tire is your wheel will get warped and then your suspension will get ruined, and everyone knows this. And if anybody, regardless of your health status, if I walked up to you with a truck that had a totally flat tire and I'm like, man, this thing rides like shit, and they're like, how long have you had a flat tire? And I said 2 years, and they're like, they'd be like, you're an idiot. Of course your truck rides like shit. And I'd be like, you're tired all the time. How long you been eating like that? 10 years. Of course your body runs like shit. Now,
Yeah.
the higher performance you want out of the vehicle, the more precise you have to be. That's a different conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think that's a really good analogy. It's, all right, how long you been limping around on that ankle or that foot or whatever. And so, yeah, no wonder that you have back issues going up the chain. No wonder that you have knee issues going down the chain because you've been sitting on a gun belt weird for 20 years. And now all of a sudden you're limping, your back hurts, you're limping. So now you got knee issues and gait issues. And you try to go work out to do it and everything just hurts. And then so like you're all the way down, you're so far past that baseline, then it becomes an issue of like, how do you piece it back together? What do you triage first? That's a tough one.
it is tough. And for me, when I'm doing that, I try to take into account not just what the problems are, but who the person is. So, what is the entry point with the least friction? So, when I talk to an individual, what is the thing, what is the easiest first step for them to take? So, I don't deliver to them, here's the optimal package in order for you to go from my back hurts and I'm chubby to Captain America. Instead, it's here's the simplest thing that you could do to start and find some level of success. Because the reward of a successful outcome is what legitimately motivates people to keep trying. Right. So they're motivated by, okay, I have this goal. I feel that with effort, it's achievable. And I try, and then I get it. And I go, oh shit, man, I can make a change that made a difference in how I feel or how I operated. Right. Maybe I should try something else. And now we're having some dialogue. Another, if we zoom back out to the idea of policies, and this is something I talk with people in the special operations community about, one issue is that during training, you're issued equipment. And then, for all intents and purposes, you're taught how to use that equipment and how to maintain it. At least the ABCs. Here's what this thing is. This is what it does. Here's how you keep it in working order so that it can help you do your job. If it gets past your level of skill, here's the person that you talk to get a new one or to get this one in working order. So you're issued a system, right? All tactical professions have this: a system for taking equipment, system for chain of command, no system for how to take care of this. We'll just use up the person until there's nothing left, and then we got new people coming in. The reason, I think, in part, more and more dialogue is being had about officer wellness, firefighter wellness, military wellness, is because less people are signing up to do these really hard jobs.
That's for sure.
And so now we're like, oh shit, there's a lot of other options.
Yep.
And the types of people whose personality would normally move towards this, not only is the environment doesn't seem very appreciative for this sacrifice, but also at the end of it, everything's going to hurt and I'm going to feel like shit. That doesn't seem like a good deal. So now my argument as of late has been, during these opportunities where you have a captive audience on the left end, on the front end. So now we're talking about like academy situations. Simple things could be introduced, like, hey, this job has shift work. Even if you never see crazy action during the course of this job, simply the act of 20 years of disrupted sleep can cause problems. Here's some simple things to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to help maintain your sleep. There's somebody who will check in with you on a regular basis to make sure this shit. Here's simple things to keep all your joints in working order. You don't need to be Captain America, but let's not have your shoulders falling apart by the time you're 30. Right? Now, does that mean everybody takes an equivalent level of responsibility? That's never true. But at least the ABCs were issued in the first place. Right? And I know that's been an uphill argument in law enforcement and firefighting, for that matter, for a very long time, is declining fitness standards and focus on health. But probably the door will swing the other way now because there's so many problems as a result of neglecting that stuff.
Yeah, I think they're going to be forced to, because of like what you just mentioned. The applications across the country are so far down. It's insane how, like, just locally, like, seeing the job market just tank. And it's like people that would not have even been in the process before are now just getting handed jobs because don't have any other options. And at some point, they're going to have to look at it and be like, all right, we need people to stay on this job for longer. Like, how can we do that? How can we treat them as an actual investment in the city or the county or the whatever? These people are physically an investment, mentally an investment, emotionally an investment for us and our community, and rather than just throwaways. And that by proxy will also raise the pay if they treat us like that.
Yeah.
But we don't even look at ourselves like that. So until we look at ourselves like that, like, nobody else is going to either. So that's a big issue. But
And I think, again, like, some of the disconnect is people get these ideas of ideals in health and think that if I'm not making this mark, then it's a very fatalistic, like, then just screw it, just to hell with it. Rather than, man, things are really hard right now. I have a C- in health, but I'm looking for an opportunity for extra credit. Can I get this thing to a B? Maybe you'll never get an A. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but maybe the conditions that you're working in just don't allow for an A. I don't know that.
yeah,
But you can go, you know what, though? I could get a B minus. I could get a B minus for 10 years. You'd be surprised, a B minus for 10 years, how good you'd feel, like, health wise.
for sure, you can use so many different analogies. You could use
Yeah.
like a grading, a scorecard analogy, like we're doing, and say, all right, if I am in great shape, I physically training, I get an A, I work my ass off, right? Nutrition, I am on point, all my macros are dialed in, right? I get an A, right? Sleep, I work night shifts, all right, I'm starting at a C, so boom, you're starting 1 foot in the grave, right? But on two of your other, mentally, I'm going to counseling once a week, I'm staying on my game, my relationships are good, everything else is an A. You're still going to end up with at least a 3.7. You're going to be on the honor roll. Things are going to be all right. You can
Yeah.
also look at it like you would on a sports team. Like, you want to stick with the football analogy. There are people that are gifted with really great speed and really great strength, and some people that aren't. And their genetic potential is just a little bit lower, but they still work their ass off. They got a great attitude and they still get on the field. They might not start, but they're still getting in the mix. So there's a lot of things that are the same with across the board life. Things aren't fair. Things aren't even. We choose things for other things, right? I could choose not to be a cop and I would give up a lot of the experiences I have, but I would get better sleep. I would get less stress, right? Those things would happen, but I would have a trade off. You got to choose things for other things. That's the way
Yeah.
life is. Yeah.
I 100% agree. I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell. There are no solutions, there are only trade offs.
No, absolutely.
So there is no I've had this talk with many executive clients over the years where executives think often, if I dump enough money into this, I'll reach some state of physiological utopia where nothing bothers me and I sleep perfect and everything in life like magically organizes itself into some nirvana. And I'm like, man, I don't know who sold you that bill of goods, but that is bullshit. There is no physiological utopia where everything is just perfect. That's not a biological reality. Forget about modern times. That's never been true, ever.
Yeah.
Being alive is hard. We're fighting entropy all the time. The world generates stress. What we're talking about is the ability to adapt well to the stress that's forced upon you and the stress that you choose. That's actually what being healthy is. How adaptable do you want to be to that stress? Then now we're talking about choices again. If you want to just not sleep well and booze it up and eat potato chips at every meal, fine. But also know that the burden of the reality that comes later, you have to live with. So just pick. Now, if you don't have sufficient tools or you're overwhelmed with information, or the information you're getting hasn't been made relevant or accessible, that is not an individual's fault. That's a failure of education. And that's what I see. I see more and more in tactical populations, more and more people want the information, but less and less people know how to sift through the mountains of influence that is going on. What's important? Okay, so I shouldn't watch any TV. Fuck, huh? And these are conversations I had. I shouldn't watch TV before bed, but that's when I like hang out with my wife, and that's when we create opportunities to goof off and talk to each other and connect. Then it's, oh, so what am I supposed to do? I hit this friction point, so hell with it. That's when I'm like, nah, man, I watch TV with my wife before bed too. I just do all the other sleep stuff as perfect as possible. But if you're in the middle of a crazy work period where you're only getting 5 hours of sleep a night, you might have to give somewhere. Either the TV or watch it with amber glasses on, or something has to give, right? But the idea is to know the reality of the effect. If I watch TV late at night and I already have sleep disruption, it can affect me more seriously than if I don't. We're just going to start there. I'm not saying don't watch TV with your wife. I'm saying know how much it costs and how much is in the bank so you can make a choice. And when I present it like that, then people feel like they have options. And I think that's way more powerful than saying, here's a list of protocols you have to do in order to sleep well to perform. I don't think that is helpful. Anyway, I think that's one of the issues when health educators talk to tactical populations is that we often have in our minds the checklist that will make sleep perfect, not considering the totality of the reality for the person that we're talking to. And that if you talk to a cop who only has a few hours a day to see their family anyway, and then they're watching TV and you tell them watching TV before bed is bad for them, they're going to disregard that information, or they're going to be like, I have to choose between what hanging out this little bit of time that I get with my family or sleeping well. Fuck it. I'll just pay the price on the back end and have a couple beers and fall asleep after TV. Instead of, there are grades of refinement in there where you can have this time with your family, but maybe you can help yourself by taking this little sleep supplement. That there's this concept of tuning, right? Where you can find the frequency of all the things together that raises you towards the net outcome of being healthier, but that your sleep doesn't have to be perfect and your exercise doesn't have to be perfect. It's like, oh, okay, I listened to Huberman. He said I should do, and I don't mean to pick on him because he puts out a lot of information, but this is common things because he's like the guy right now. I need to do this much hypertrophy. And then he plunges in the ice bath and then he does this. And I'm like, dude, he's a millionaire health entrepreneur, Stanford neuroscientist. His life and your life are not the same life. You can't use him as your example because the environment that you're working in is not the same environment that he's working in. Are there things that you could pick and choose to try to see how they fit in for you? Yes. But is it going to be this like monastic approach to health? No, because you traded that for serving your community. And you know what, man? I think that's a damn good trade. Honestly, all things being equal, the community needs policing. And it's a good job. It's stressful and it's hard, and some people get cynical, right? But all in all, I think spending a good chunk of your life in service of your community is pretty awesome. That can be a pretty fulfilling, meaningful thing to do. And then the trade for that is some of the conditions I'm in are less than ideal for my baseline health. Given that, I need accessible ways to modify my behavior to make up for that. What are the ones that work for me?
Yeah, Kelly Starrett, I heard him a long time talk about undoing the bad time. So what can we do to undo the bad time? And I think he was actually, it was an old video. I remember him saying that. And it was actually a military dude who was, I think, a helicopter pilot. He was always turtled up, right? Because he's in real confined space. So you're not gonna get rid of that problem that you're gonna be, let's say, for a squad car, for example. I'm not gonna get rid of the problem that I'm gonna have thoracic spine issues from wearing a vest, wearing heavy gear sometimes for extended periods of time. That's not going to go away. Right. I'm making the choice to be on a tactical team, to be in this population. So I'm going to have thoracic spine issues and hip problems. Right. That's probably going to be a thing. Now, what can I do on the back end to undo some of that bad time? Right. Because I know I'm going to have to come out of that, undo some of that, and then go back and do it again for a long over and over. Right. And what Huberman, I think, does really well is he presents information and tools. Like, here's tools. This tool might be good for you and undoing some of that bad time. But where we get wrapped around the axle with it is trying to think that we need to use all the tools. And it's, for me, I look at it literally like building things. I am very bad at that. So if you want me to fix something, I got about 2 things I can do, and that is all. So me having some expensive saw or something, I'm going to look at it and go, this is pretty cool. I'm still going to need to hire somebody else to do it because I don't know how to operate.
Yep.
So my rudimentary skill set is just this, right? And I can take the time to learn how to use that expensive saw, but it's going to take me some time to do it. I'm going to have to really commit to it, and then I can build that skill. The same thing's true of everything else. Like, you listen to Huberman, he's got some really high level shit, but it's don't step over dollars to pick up quarters. Don't do that. So yeah, pick your tools wisely. And that's where having people to help with education, like you talked about, is super helpful, where it's just pick some people that are going to give you the basic, simplest stuff and build from there.
Yeah. And Kelly was and has been a mentor of mine for a long time. And one of the main things that I got from him was this idea of, okay, if you're talking about health interventions, what is the simplest thing that a person can do today to take some autonomy over their own health? So again, if we're talking about something like sleep, and I'll give you a literal example to bring it back to that. I had a guy in one of my classes tell me, like, hey man, I know limiting blue light is a thing, but my wife likes to watch TV in bed, and I don't want to sleep on the couch every night. I don't want to be away from my wife. I need to do something to like chill. And I said, do you have a dog? And he was like, yeah. I said, do you walk it? He said, no. And I'm like, do you think that your dog would like to go for a walk? And he was like, yeah. I said, great. Take your dog for a 10 to 30-minute walk, whatever you have, before you start your wind down time with your family. Just go walk your dog, whatever, whenever that is, before dinner, after dinner. Hey, I'm going to go walk Fido around the block. Get some sunlight. Put your phone so it's do not disturb unless it's work or your wife. Put it in your pocket. Go for a walk. Decompress yourself. Get some sun and go home. And I saw him a few days later and he was like, man, my deep sleep went from 20 minutes a night to 45 minutes a night from walking my dog. And I was like, awesome. Next problem.
All right.
Like, is that, if you went to a sleep scientist and you're like, is 45 minutes of deep sleep sufficient? They'd be like, ooh, we really want more like 90. But I think 200% improvement is pretty good for walking your dog.
For a week. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that's baked in is if you start walking a dog at a certain time every day, it will bug you to walk it at that time. So you have a built-in alarm that says, hey, it's time to do that thing. And so now baked into this little dumb, simple thing is an improvement in sleep. And those are the kind of things that are really simple, that aren't like some crazy supplement or some crazy glasses, or we start sometimes, like you said, with the most expensive saw. And it's, man, do you know how to hammer a nail in? Just, can you hammer a nail? And then just start there. And then you're like, oh, okay, I know how to hammer a nail now. It's cool. Well, maybe for you, that's all you'll ever need.
Yeah.
You know, what I found that happens though is as people continue to be successful with very small things, they get curious. They go, man, that worked and I feel better. And that's really what gets people curious, is when they feel better. Not just when some wearable tells them that they slept better, but when their wife or their husband goes, man, you're in a good mood lately.
Yeah.
And you go, oh shit, I am in a good mood lately. What have I done different? Oh man, I'm going to bed on time. Okay, that's worth it. And that's real shit that happens. It's not even a hypothetical. These are real things I hear from people I work with. Man, this improved my relationship with my spouse because I didn't realize I was in a dog shit mood all the time because I was so tired.
Yeah.
And you go, oh man, there's like this central hub that one thing in health rippled out through the whole pond. And then you go, what else could I change that's easy? Maybe I don't have time to go spend 2 hours in the gym. Maybe I'll do sun salutation in my kitchen while my coffee's brewing. Or I'll do some push-ups in my kitchen while my coffee's brewing. Man, I started doing push-ups. My shoulders started feeling better. I feel stronger. I look better in a t-shirt. I'm feeling pretty good about this. What if I did push-ups and squats? And it turns out when people feel better, they try more stuff to keep feeling better.
Yeah.
And none of it's that complicated. Anyway.
So just because you mentioned it, and I just got one of these for Christmas, this Garmin has some of those sleep metrics on it. Like, yeah. I've never used anything before, so this is gonna make me sound stupid, but I don't care. What do the metrics mean? Like, what metrics are important? Because it tracks sleep, and how accurate is it? Like, how do I use this, and is it even accurate? Because I know there's been issues with other stuff I've looked into where I'm like, nah, okay, whatever. The wearables are wearables. I've never really put much stock to them.
So, as far as validity, is it the same thing as going and getting a sleep study? No, it's measuring sleep through an accelerometer. So like how much you're moving around. And then if it has an LED light, it can measure some potentially like pulse ox, so like blood oxygen level. Things like the Oura Ring will measure things like body temperature. They have a temperature sensor in them. It'll use changes in heart rate, but it'll use an algorithm that will make an estimation about what phase of sleep you're in. Those are accurate enough that you can compare them to themselves.
Okay.
So if you use the same Garmin every single night for a year, that's reliable enough data to see trends. Does it mean this is the exact amount of minutes that you actually spend in deep sleep to the millisecond? No. But you might see things like when I go to bed later than 11 p.m., I have more disrupted sleep. So if it's something like restfulness, I don't know if the Garmin measures restfulness, but that would be how much you, for example, how much you move around during sleep, right? So are you relatively stable and you stay in that state of sleep, or are you tossing and turning a lot and waking yourself up in the middle of a deep sleep cycle? And so if things like that, like restfulness, then you can go, oh man, when the room is hot, I move around a lot. And so now I'm making a connection between something that's going on in the environment and my ability to rest well. So it's really useful for generating trends or making connections and behaviors and outcomes. But is it like my watch said I got 22 minutes exactly of REM? Maybe not.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at who Garmin third party tests against.
Yeah.
But what's most important is that you compare that data to itself.
So how much like REM sleep are you looking at getting? Assuming that the Garmin is accurate enough, let's stick with that one. So like when you say 22 minutes of REM, is that appropriate or are you looking for more? Like what's ideal?
If we're talking about normative value and we make the assumption that you're getting 7 hours of sleep, which is 8 hours in bed, somewhere around 90 minutes of REM sleep over the course of the night would be ideal.
Okay.
And somewhere around 90 minutes of deep sleep would be ideal. But what's more important is fluctuations in your normal. So if you, let's say you wear that Garmin for 3 months and you notice on average you get whatever 60 minutes of REM. Okay, is it the same thing as getting 90 when everything is perfect? No. But you notice you had a night of rough calls. Everything else was the same. You went to bed on time. You didn't eat anything weird. You didn't have any booze. You exercised the same, but you had a rough day of work. It was just stressful. And then you're like, oh shit, I got 35 minutes of REM. Like that was a big drop. Why did that change? The next day, did it go back? You're like, okay, all things being equal, my body returned to normal. Okay, I don't really need to worry about it. Shit, I went to bed on time again. Everything else was pretty much the same. It's still low. Something is affecting my ability to recoup rest in this way. Let me try to make connections in behavior. What's going on in the environment? Work's been really stressful. When work's really stressful for me, it disrupts REM. I have more negative dreams and it wakes me up. And so I don't get as much REM sleep. And I'm just, of course, making this up totally hypothetically.
Yeah.
But you have your normative value of that 90-minute window. But then more important is, where do you oscillate in your window of normal and what things take away from that? How fast do you return to your normal? And if you add in like a health behavior, does it improve REM? You're like, no, I want to see if I can improve REM. I'm going to read a physical book for half an hour right before I go to sleep every night. And you go, damn, normally I get 60 minutes. When I read a book for half an hour, I get 75 minutes. And when I wake up, I don't have as much brain fog. I'm more clear mentally. I don't even want as much coffee. I'm like, damn, that's a good trade. Half an hour reading,
Right.
and my head's clear. I'll take it. Those are the kind of connections you want to make. Not so much Garmin can tell you, pump up the volume on your REM because it's not good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. So you're looking at taking that as taking a baseline with the tool that you have and then connecting the dots with behaviors and then feelings and outcomes. And
Of
then,
course.
then
Exactly. That's actually the whole game.
yeah.
That's actually the whole game. All metrics, weightlifting, aerobic conditioning. It's all the same. I have a measurable baseline that I've established in my strength. Am I going to hold my PR for all of time? Not even at my peak self when I was in my early 30s. Was my PR just this constant, stable thing? But I'd be like, okay, I'd work towards a new PR and then I'd focus on something else. And I'm like, okay, if I did 8 weeks of work, could I touch that PR? Then I'm good to go. If I'm like, man, my PR has dropped by 30%, I'd be like, I might need to focus in on that quality for a while and bring it back up. It's the same kind of thinking when we look at other physiological processes. We establish a baseline. We work towards what our ceiling is. Like, okay, here's my ceiling, 60 minutes of REM. The lowest I ever see is 30. What I want is over time, the lowest that I see to be 40. Maybe I won't ever see 90, but maybe I won't ever drop below 40 again because I take steps that I don't let it do that. Does that make sense? So it's like this idea of raising the floor.
Yep.
And other metrics work the same way. Managing HRV, it's the same. It's literally the exact, you measure it for a long time, you establish a baseline, you see what helps it, you see what hurts it, you connect it to outcomes. Okay, I'm going to do some breathing techniques in the morning for 5 minutes, and I'm going to do it for a month. And I'm going to look at all things being considered, did my average HRV go up? And not only did a number go up, but was the number reflective of something real that I experienced in life? Oh man, when I was in traffic, normally I'd get super pissed if somebody was driving slow. Didn't really seem to bother me. Man, this is really helping me manage my stress. My blood pressure went down. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I'm going to keep that. Right. And so this is a common idea that I talk about, which is like personal health experiments. So the purpose of metrics is for you to have a tangible way for you to measure outcomes while you manipulate your own health variables. And you can do that by taking away something that hurts and seeing how it affects you, or you can add something that helps and see how it affects you. And you end up connecting all kinds of interesting dots. And a personal anecdote is I've been measuring my sleep with the Aura Ring since they've been making Aura Rings. And a connection I made by measuring it so regularly was more than 2 or 3 days of a significant reduction in deep sleep, my low back will start to hurt. So my hamstrings will get tight and my low back will start to hurt. Doesn't matter what exercise I've been doing. Doesn't matter if I've been stretching. Doesn't matter if I'm hydrated. Jiu-jitsu, all that stuff stable. Not enough deep sleep, my low back gets stiff. So now I go, oh man, like I'm not opening the app like I should. And I'm like, whew, man, toe touches this morning. Didn't feel too good. That's the second day in a row. Hold on. What's going on with my sleep? Am I going to bed on time? Oh shit, I've been up playing Legend of Zelda until midnight the last 3 nights. I need to knock that shit off because I'm starting to feel it. Nothing bad happened yet, but all I need is one asshole to do a stack pass in jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to be laid up because I wanted to stay up doing Legend of Zelda. So now I'm just getting information that helps me become more aware of what's going on with me so I can make adjustments. Or I can go, I don't care. I want to play Zelda right now. I'll take the risk, but it won't catch me by surprise. I'll have made a calculated decision. And that's how you should use things like Garmin, Apple Watch, Aura Ring, Whoop, All those things are just information for you to inform either internal discussion or discussion with a professional if you're working with a coach. A colleague of mine says, his name's Mario Fraioli, he's an endurance coach, and he says, data drives discussions, discussion drives decisions. So you don't look at RAM and then go, oh, it went down 10 minutes, something bad happened. It's just, let me think about what are the actions that I took that led to this outcome? And is it enough for concern? It might not be. Right?
Yeah.
But at least you're not in the dark. In fact, I talk about having a dashboard. These wearables are just like having a dashboard for your health.
Yeah.
Like dashboards in cars are so that your engine doesn't catch on fire all of a sudden. It's like, hey man, this thing's super hot. You should pull over right now so that it doesn't catch on fire all of a sudden and kill you. It's the same thing for monitoring your sleep. It's okay, I know what's going on in here, so I can make some choices a little earlier so that this thing doesn't catch on fire all of a sudden and kill me.
Yeah. Lets you see into the future a little bit more.
See into the future a little bit. And then modify decisions, right? And so if you're wearing this Garmin, you might realize, oh shit, like I didn't realize how much bedtime affected me. So another personal anecdote is number one effector for heart rate variability for me is deep sleep. If I go to bed between 9:30 and 10:30, I'm pretty golden. Like almost anything else could happen. And if I go to bed on time and get that first chunk of deep sleep, my HRV is very stable. More than 2 days or 3 days of big deep sleep loss, and it starts to crack. Now, does that mean my whole life stops and I go hide in a fucking closet until things are perfect? It doesn't mean that at all. I still do stuff, but I might, if I still go work out, I might change my intensity or change my volume. Or
really, what helps me with that is you change your expectation.
Yes.
Like not change the intensity, maybe not change the volume even, but just change your expectation of your performance. And that would have helped me a ton if I would have understood that in CrossFit. I would have had way more fun with it rather than stressing out about, I don't understand why I can't PR. All my friends are PRing, but all your friends are not cops, and all your friends do not do what you do, and all your friends sleep for 8 hours a night, and you slept for 3.5, and you're on second shift, and your life's kind of a mess too. Right. So you got all these things leading up to it, and you still expect to power clean 300 pounds today? Are you out of your stupid mind? Like you're hitting 280, call it good, man. Like you're fine. But I didn't understand that because I didn't understand it.
Yeah, that's the disease of the high performer, unfortunately, my friend. People who are high performing individuals have high expectations all the time, and only through or often through time do they realize, man, I had unfair expectations of myself given the conditions. But unreasonable expectations is often what drives people to become high performing. Is if I had a reasonable expectation of myself, I'd only be like, okay.
Yeah, but I think there's a serious balance here. And this is like a mental game where you have to be able to balance your high expectations and not giving yourself an out to suck. But you also can't just beat the shit out of yourself if you don't hit that expectation. You have to give yourself a little bit of grace. And that's hard to do. It's hard to find that balance between giving yourself grace and then also demanding a super high level of yourself. That's a difficult balance.
It is. I 100% agree. And that is why it's important to have both objective and subjective metrics, because objective metrics can help you deliver some context and go, oh, I didn't perform like shit because I suck. I didn't perform well because I had 3 hours of sleep and I'm a cop and I have young kids. There's all this other context. And you're like, damn, 280 is pretty good. Yeah. But I'm going to revisit this in a few weeks when I get a good night of sleep and the house is chill. I'm going to come back to this. Absolutely. It's a very difficult balance to strike where you don't make excuses to suck, but provide yourself some grace. And I think some of the metrics and ideas that we talked about so far are a good way to do that. right? What's measurable that I have? And it's also a good reason to have a coach, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Having a coach, even if you don't always have a coach, working with a professional, whether that's for mental health, physical health, sleep, CrossFit, whatever, is helpful because you can talk to a person who's not in directly in your situation, and they can step back and go, man, I know 280, but hey, don't forget, like, you have all this other shit going on. Like, this is actually a great day. And to hear that alternative perspective, even if in the moment you're still frustrated, can inform how you consider performance in the future. And so those coaching and mentorship type relationships are really important. And I think that they're more and more important the older I get, the more I realize how important they are for people to have other people to go, hey man, like, it's not what you think it is. Like, here's the totality of the picture a little bit
Yeah.
more.
And I think more with the like staying with the Garmin's and the AI and all the metrics and all the stuff that we have available now and we'll have more in the future, that personal connection, that human to human contact is going to be even more important, I think, in the future.
I agree. And I found that, look, people want to talk to people. Even when they use metrics, they still want to talk to somebody else about what ChatGPT told them.
Yeah.
Or what Aura Ring told them. And again, the program that I work in is organized by the Navy SEAL Foundation. So they're well funded. Everybody that comes through the program is issued an Aura Ring. They get professional strength and conditioning coaching that teaches them how to turn the thing on and use it. They still want to come to class and ask me about it.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about? They want to know what someone else thinks about it because we're social, right? So we want to know, what do you think about this? Because you're a person. And I think people want that connection. But I also think that no matter how sophisticated AI gets or how good our data is, it's not the same thing as the perspective and experience from an experienced human. They're not the same thing. And the ability to deliver context is very different in human to human. Like, AI doesn't have empathy, right? So that empathy is, I can put myself in your shoes and think like you think for a minute and go, oh man, how would I feel if XYZ happened? Hey man, don't worry about that you didn't hit your PR, because that's a human thing fundamentally. And again, that drives discussion. But I think data is very helpful. It's very useful. It has a place, but you have to be able to interpret it and then take some kind of meaningful action based on the data. Otherwise, it's just numbers on a cool looking wristband.
Yeah, it is cool though.
It is cool. By the way, Garmin, from what I understand, that Garmin that you're wearing has a pretty darn accurate VO2 max test.
Does it really? How do you use it? There's so much shit in here. I clicked through it and I'm like, I don't know. I just needed to wake me up in the morning.
Yeah, I haven't used that one yet, but I went and got a VO2 max test on a true metabolic cart, the exercise science lab at a university nearby. And the PhD that runs the exercise phys program was wearing the new Garmin that you have, same one. And he was like, we were just talking about metrics, nerding out. And he was like, man, he's like, actually, I did a VO2 with this watch and in here. And he was like, it was pretty close. He's like, it's closer than any other watch I've ever worn. He's like, cool. I don't know how they calibrated it, but it's pretty accurate. And he doesn't have any vested interest in it. He's definitely a informed individual. But yeah, he said it was pretty good.
I'll have to play around with it.
Yeah.
Hey, one more question for you, and you can go in as much depth as you want with this. I got about another 20 minutes. I got to go pick up my kids from wrestling. But as far as one thing that drives me nuts is tactical based programming. Everyone's got a different kind of definition of what that means. And some people, I look at their program and I'm like, this looks the same as all your other programs. And I'm like, what makes it tactical other than you just want to sell it to military dudes or cops? In your opinion, what is a tactical based fitness program? Like, what does it consist of?
Okay, so in order to answer that question, we have to answer that question first. What is the purpose of strength and conditioning? Why we do it? And there's the layers to that are one, general preparedness. So what does that mean? It means being healthy. So number one is, on whole, if you do the program, are you healthier than if you don't do it? So if you're more beat to shit and you can handle less of the stress from your job, it's not a good program. That's under any timeline. So number one is the purpose of strength and conditioning is to raise the baseline level of health of the athlete, regardless of their tactical or not. With that said, if you're in a tactical program and the program only cares about itself and doesn't consider the context of the other stress load, like high volume, it's high intensity, it doesn't take into account how long it takes. To me, that's not a tactical program because you're not thinking about the end user. So if it's like, this is tactical because we do shit with weight vests on, but it takes 2 hours. That's a person who doesn't work in a tactical environment because they don't know that people that work in tactical environments don't have fucking 2 hours.
Yeah.
Very rarely do they have 2 hours. So those are just like basic things, general things. Like, does it make me healthier so that I can sustain a level of adaptability that allows me to continue to do my job? So the job is the first thing. Just if you do strength and conditioning to support a sport, if your kids are at wrestling practice, if I give them strength and conditioning and it makes them too tired to do skill work at wrestling, I failed. If it makes them so cooked and burn out that they're tired and they get sick more often because of the load that I'm putting on them, I failed. If I give them enough to make them healthier and to move better and better, I win. Does your bench press matter? Have you ever been on the street and somebody was like, hold on, officer, how much do you bench? And then you're like, 315 for reps. And they were like, never mind, I give up.
I've never had anybody say that, but I've had a few people that I think have thought that. No, I don't.
But they thought you were physically capable.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't about the number on the bar.
Yes. The
right? They were like, this dude looks like he can handle himself.
Yes.
I'll work it out in court.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't, everything in the program should be in service of the job, not in service of improving the numbers in the program. Any metrics that are in the program, the question should be, when we measure this, what's the effect on general health? And then what's the performance outcome in the job? And if you can't create a connection point, now, does that mean you need to put on your vest and all your gear and do pull-ups so you know what it's like to do pull-ups in your gear? No, we use more ergonomic training tools because it's easier to progressively overload the human body to get strength, to get stronger, faster, more mobile with more efficiency. Don't use a barbell because you don't lift a barbell on the streets is bad logic. We don't use a barbell because nothing else we ever pick up in life is like a barbell. Nothing. A barbell is shaped the way it is because it's easy for your hand to grab and you can load it symmetrically. Yeah. That's why a barbell is shaped like a barbell. If you can grab something more easily and load it symmetrically, then you can progress load more effectively over time and get generally stronger. Now, if we're talking about tactical and we get even more specific, then you have to analyze demands of the job. Just like if you were on the playing field. Okay, what are the demands of an athlete who plays football, and then the position of the player. So what are the specifics? Here's a thing most people don't consider when they think about something like law enforcement. One thing that happens in law enforcement that's very different from anywhere else is you're sitting down for a really long time, and then all of a sudden you might have to run as fast as you can. Does that mean you should do wind sprints all the time? Like, it probably wouldn't hurt to do some sprinting, but a bigger question is, do you have hip extension? So you're going to destroy your fucking back or blow your knee up, even if you catch the person, because you sit all the time and don't even have access to the range of motion that's required to run hard. Those are the kind of things I think about. So if you have a person who's sitting all the time and their body is really stiff from sitting, do they even have access to the basic like motor patterns that are going to be required in the job?
Yeah.
So do you have hip extension? Hip extension is basically like the baseline of running hard. It's very hard to run hard or fast. To run fast, if your hip doesn't extend well. If you sit all the time, guess what's going to happen? It'll make it harder and harder for your hip to extend. Now, does that mean you have to do 50 million stretches all the time? No, but maybe you should regularly be doing like walking lunges or split squats, nice little thumbs up bubble, or step ups. And that's more of a priority with limited time than bilateral stance, really heavy back squats.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean never do back squats? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you look at the total volume that you have in a program for a tactical athlete, and you know they must run at some point and run hard to catch a human that doesn't want to be caught, and you want to minimize the cost of that, they have to be able to extend their hip well. So for me, I would be programming things like lunges and split squats and step ups so that they can get exposure to that range of motion under load on a regular basis, and then be doing things like skipping, like basic sprint warm-up stuff that's not as hard on the nervous system, things that everybody does in track and field warm-up and football practice warm-up to get ready to run. You don't need to have perfect running technique to be a police officer. What you don't want is to blow your calf up while you're chasing a suspect.
Yeah.
That's a problem. You have a radio for a reason. So you need to be able to chase somebody or run away from something. But probably the biggest limiter will be, do I even have access to the basic shape? And then to be doing those shapes under a variety of loads, intensities, and tempos. That's just one basic example, but do you have an analysis where you go, what are the demands of this job? What do I need to be able to do? How frequently do I actually do that thing? The thing that police officers do the most is sit in a fucking car.
Yeah, or at a desk, yeah.
Or at a desk.
Yeah.
And then it's all of a sudden, at an unknown time and intensity, we need you to deliver maximal effort.
Yeah.
And
have your decision-making be perfect.
And have your decision-making be perfect. The strength and conditioning programming you're doing should reflect those needs. Now, there's a million ways to slice that, and most of them are probably personal preference. Some people like a powerlifting feel. Some people want to go do field strong, like John Wellborn, power athlete type stuff, where it's very lifting and sprint centric. Some people don't want to load their bodies up, or they have pain and they want to do calisthenic work. I don't really care. What I want to know is, do you know how this applies to the fundamental demands of the job? Do you have a line of justification that goes all the way from why I chose this exercise in this way, all the way to here's the demand that's going to happen on the job? And another thing I'll say about that is thinking in terms of qualities over replicating the environment, because you can't. The only way to expose yourself to the environment is to be in that environment. It's kind of like when you see jujitsu people shrimping on turf while tied to a sled. That's stupid. Shrimping is context dependent. The reason that movement exists is to disrupt the base of somebody who's mounted on you. That you attack their legs with your hips. That's the only time shrimping matters. There's no other context when a human moves like that. And you can't overload the system easily. You'd be better off just pushing the sled.
Right.
Shrimping with a sled's fucking dumb. Just like doing pull-ups in your police uniform, so it's more like the job is silly. Don't work out in your police uniform. Wear workout clothes and try to get stronger and healthier in the most efficient way possible with the given time that you have. What are your access to resources? Like, you have to have time under tension, right? You have to do things that make your body get really tense and work hard. Do your muscles get really tense and work hard? And do you do that in a variety of planes? Straight up and down, side to side, and rotational. Do you have basic gait? Could you walk up a hill? Could you walk down a hill? Could you run up a hill? Could you run down a hill? Do you have access to basic ranges of motion? Can you put both arms over your head and hang from a bar? Can you do push-ups? Can you squat down? It's really simple stuff. Now, if you're talking about a specific job in a tactical environment, now we might be like, hey, I'm on the SWAT team, and what we do is serve search warrants. And so I'm the guy who kicks the door in. I'm like, oh, now we're talking about something else.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about something else. Oh, now you have a very specific job, right? Oh, you're a door kicker? Oh, I want you to look like Professor Doom coming in the door. I want you to fill the doorway with your shoulders so that you get immediate compliance.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's the kind of answer you were looking for.
No, that actually tells me if I was going to hire somebody to be a coach for me, it would be somebody that spoke like that versus, oh, we want to make it look like your job, so we're going to put you in all your gear and stuff like that is just clickbait. And the stuff that, like, I posted something, pull-ups on shift, it was just because I was bored and I knew people would like it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but that's not the core of your strength and conditioning program.
No,
You're just saying, hey, I saw an opportunity to move around, and so I did.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is when you have professions where there might be limited time and access to strength and conditioning in a more formal sense, microdosing is completely reasonable. Put a kettlebell in the station, right? Man, I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to hit some swing. I'm going to hit 20 kettlebell swings.
Yeah.
There's a pull-up bar in the station. I'm going to just hang for a minute and get my shoulders open while my partner checks in.
Yep.
I'm going to get a few, and you'd be surprised like how much that stuff aggregates over time. So those little micro doses, like one of the things I have done, like when I've worked with officers, is like, hey, don't you stop and get out of your car, and like part of community policing, sometimes you just like out of your vehicle, you're just like talking to people, being in a space, right? You're just visible in the environment. Hey, we're here. Okay. Why don't you put your foot up on the hood of your vehicle and get your hip open? This is a female officer who's having a lot of back pain. She's a normal patrol officer. And I was like, you mean sitting on top of a giant belt full of equipment doesn't feel good in your back for 9 hours a night? Surprise. I'm like, get out and make your body make a different shape than sitting. I was like, I didn't give her anything fancy. Put one leg behind you for a minute or two, and then put the other one behind you for a minute or two, and just try to do that 5 times a shift. Yeah. Oh, wow. This felt better. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like, your body's supposed to move around. Go walk around. Get out of the vehicle. Go in a store. Walk around. Be a presence. And that's how it used to be all the time, right? It's just walking a beat, just walking all the time. But I think a strength and conditioning program for tactical populations isn't that different than a strength and conditioning program for general performance.
I think it, yeah, yeah. I think the difference to me is it's more like sport performance. It's so much more like sport performance. And this is where I've been making a lot of connections now coaching high school kids in football is like a back squat, for example. Back squats matter for football, but they are correlates only. It is not a one for one. If I squat 300 pounds, I'm going to be X amount of good. But if I squat 400, I'm going to be way better. Maybe not. You might be zero better at 400 pounds versus 300 pounds. But it is usually a correlate where usually the guy that bench presses more and squats more and kicks more ass on the football field, usually, but it's not a one-to-one. It doesn't always mean it. So I think that's true of tactical populations as well, where it's, yeah, we got to squat. We got to be able to produce force against the ground for maximal loading. Like that's an important thing. But what's the requisite amount for you, for what you do, for your job, for your age, for where you're at with life? That's an important conversation to understand.
Yeah. And inside of all strength conditioning and training is also what people like.
Yeah. Yes.
And people won't do something that they don't like.
That's the first.
This is the thing you have to do. Then you lost them.
Yeah, especially if I hate it. That's usually the first thing I ask people is like, what have you had success with previously? And what do you enjoy doing? What is going to do? Because the best program, I can put together the most perfect tactical based program for you as a cop. But if I put it together and you're like, I fucking hate this thing, you're never going to do it and you're never going to get better. So that's critical, is that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the magic in programming for specific populations is understanding the total context that they're operating in, and then the specific demands of the actual activity. And tactical populations have a unique level of continuous stress loading. Athletes leave the game, and it's not like athletes don't think about the game when they're not playing the game. Of course they do, but it's not a constant level of vigilance that becomes a normal part. My parents have been retired from policing for more than 20 years now. They still have that thing where they're always paying attention to who's around, what's going on, who's close, how are people interacting. That's a part of who they are now. They're just more vigilant. All of that drives context. So if you're in a law enforcement environment and you're up all night paying attention to what's going on around you and listening to the radio and putting stuff in the computer and making arrests, pulling people over, making a traffic stop, wondering, who am I walking up on right now? Your strength and conditioning program is occurring within the context of that environment. And so one of the big questions is like, what can you actually recover from? Now we spent the whole first part of this talk, like how much sleep do you have? It's, I mean, you could build out the perfect, like block 1A, block 1B, block 2A, block 2B, all the assistance work is perfect, but the person only sleeps 4 hours a night. It means essentially fuck all. Right. Yeah. So it's like, what can they recover from and get continuous and regular progress that won't detract from the performance outcomes? And we both know, like, community policing is not just about physical capacity either. So you have a master's degree in psychology?
Yeah.
A big part of it is, can you develop rapport with the people that you police? Do you know how to communicate with other people? It's like a lot of physical stuff is avoidable if you just know how to talk to a person. Like, yeah. Right? My mom used to tell me she would talk people into letting her arrest them. Yeah. Hey man, you know the game. Why'd you do that right in front of me? You know what I got to do now? Like, why'd you put me in this position? You're not supposed to be out here doing this. And I saw you, like, you know what I got to do? Like, hey man, I'm a cop. Like, I have to arrest you. Come on. And it's just kind of talking to me. All right, just turn. And this, she'd be like, I used to talk people into let me handcuff them all the time. She's like, I know they don't want to be arrested. She's like, literally talk them into it.
Yeah.
It's, oh, they know the game. You know the game. Sorry, don't blah, blah, blah. You're gonna go down there. Let the lawyer handle it. Blah, 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 blah. All right. She just knows how to develop rapport, and then being in the neighborhood, being around, like there's a lot other than the physical skill is keep you healthy. And then when shit hits the absolute fan, do you have a base level of capacity that will allow you to thrive under those conditions? And over time, if you're a strength and conditioning coach who works with people, like for me, I've never been a police officer. So if I was going to work with police officers, I'd want to survey some police officers and figure out what are the task demands, the real task demands of this environment. Like, how are you spending your time? And then, okay, that's how I'm going to prioritize what I expose you to based on the reality of how you spend your time in this job.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you this. I had to have, but maybe I didn't. After the art of breath, when we really got into when I really learned how to do better down regulating, right? So up regulate on purpose and then down regulate on purpose, like start that process. Then I started being more aware on the job. Like probably the biggest issue that I see as far as stress on the job is even when we don't get called to all right, if you have a warrant, I could say, put your hands behind your back and you fight me. That's one thing. And it's almost better that the fight happened rather than the ones that are way more common where it's all right. I think there might be a fight. There's almost going to be a fight. And then you decide that you don't want to fight. But I'm still super sympathetic. I'm still way up regulated. And now there was no physical outlet to deal with that stress. And now I'm just jacked up for hours, usually by the almost ones versus the ones that actually transpired. Does that make sense?
Sure. Of course.
So being able to down regulate after the fight that almost happened or the shooting that almost happened, like calling somebody out of a car at gunpoint where we didn't shoot them, happens all the time, right? All the time. But it doesn't change the fact that the physiological response is basically the same as if I did pull the trigger or I did throw you on the ground and we had to fight. So being able to down regulate and know how to do that and do that all the time, because that happens 3, 4, 5 times a shift. Even if nothing happens, technically nothing happens. Physiologically, it already did.
Yeah, anticipatory stress. Yeah.
Yes.
We're just like, this might. It is definitely better to get on the other side of an actual event in many cases, assuming it goes your way. But I do think that's an important skill and also one that can be trained in the strength and conditioning environment before you have to apply it under real conditions, right? You can use the same physiological signatures in the gym environment to learn how to manipulate your physiology so that when you are on the job, you go, oh man, I know what this feeling is. I was getting ready to do this, whatever we used to say, like back in the CrossFit days, oh shit, I'm getting ready to do Fran. And you would notice like Fran's a miserable piece of shit, even if you're really fit. Sometimes it's worse if you're really fit because you can go that much harder.
That much faster, yeah.
In the 5 minutes or 10 minutes before 3, 2, 1 go was worse than the last 7 thrusters in the set of 21. Like I was just like, I just want to start. I just want to go so I can work really hard and then be done. It was that like before where I'm like, all right, that's where all the hand wringing happens. I might have to pee, I might not. All of that sort of sympathetic arousal that's leading to the event. More and more lately, I've been calling the regulation of that feeling left foot braking. So if your sympathetic nervous system is like a gas pedal, your parasympathetic is like a brake. It's like applying the brake while the gas is still on. So there's left foot braking. Because in a high stress environment, you want your sympathetic to work.
Yes.
You want it on. You just don't want to lose control of it. So breathing under those conditions not only can downregulate when it's over, but in the moment, it's like left foot braking where I go, okay, I can meter this so that I can take full advantage of this physiology without it overwhelming me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to use it. I've said that same thing, not in that same terms, but you have to allow your nervous system to do its job because in fight or flight, if you're facing a fight, you want it on. Now, if you determine this is where breathing, I think will keep you in a little bit like you let your physiology work, and then you have to be able to harness it at some point and say consciously, do I want this? Yes or no. And if I do, that means you're in a no shit real fight and you need it. Keep it, right? But if it's yes or no, nope, the person's backing down. This is where de-escalation, I think people don't understand how to de-escalate themselves, because you can't de-escalate a situation unless you can de-escalate yourself. And once you decide, no, this is no longer, I don't need this level of sympathetic response, then you have to know how to bring it back down, because you can't downregulate a situation unless you can downregulate yourself. People don't even discuss that.
So. When you're yelling at the top of your lungs, sir, calm down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who needs to calm down here? Who?
Yeah. That's like putting your hands like this and saying, I don't want to fight. Man, I know your mouth is saying that, but your hands are telling me you want to fight.
Yeah. I'm not
right?
really trying. Yeah.
Now, all those tools are super helpful. And I'm really glad to see that while this is always an uphill thing, but I also think at large, tactical professions are becoming more and more aware of the need for these kind of skill sets, whether it's down regulation or building skills around sleep or understanding managing stress better. Unfortunately, most of the time we learn these things through the blood of our mistakes. But on the whole, I see at least more focus on what is available for officer wellness, firefighter wellness, medical, military. And it's important because we need people who are willing and able to sit on the fence. And we need you guys to keep doing it and doing it well. Like, it's a necessary part of the culture that we live in, that somebody has to police, somebody has to be there for emergency medical. We need people in the military to be ready, willing, and able to defend. All that stuff is important, but it's not sustainable over the really long run if people are horribly unhealthy and the word gets out. Because then it's, oh, man, I don't want to do that shit. What's the uptick?
Yeah.
So,
well, dude, thanks so much. I got a jet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still want to get down to Virginia and hang out and come train and stuff. I would love
anytime.
to. But
Anytime.
where can people find more about Check Engine Light and whatever you're doing on social and projects and whatnot? You always got stuff going on in school.
Yeah, I have a Substack where I release an article usually every week. The Substack is called Check Engine Light. So if you go to checkenginelight.substack.com, you can subscribe. It's free. I do stuff. I talk about research papers. There's articles about sleep, movement. I wrote an article a week ago called Kettlebell in the Kitchen, which is just like how to manipulate the environment, keep a kettlebell in your kitchen. And that's one way to start being healthier. I have a book coming out in June called Check Engine Light. So you can go to Check Engine Light, thecheckenginelightbook.com, and that book's there. At the Check Engine Light on Instagram. Anything that I put out, any talks that I do will be posted on one or all of those places. And I talk to law enforcement, first responder, military. I do a lot of work in the combat sports community. So professional MMA, professional grappling. So I'm in the thick of it all the time, using these strategies with real people. So reach out.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. I will talk to you. Sure. And then I have a school platform. I don't know if you're familiar with school at all. It's like a little community driven thing. You can put courses up, but I'm just trying to add, it's free, but I'm just trying to add as many experts as I can. So I know we all need another app like a hole in the head, but I'll send you an invite if you want to jump in. I'd love to have you. Just post whatever.
Yeah. Send me an invite. Sweet. For sure. Awesome. All right, dude. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Take care.